Hey y'all, what is going on? What is going on? It's your girl, Melba Pearson, Melba from Miami, Melba for Justice, also known as the resident legal diva. And it is time for another Mondays with Melba. I hope everyone had a great weekend and are continuing to stay engaged on all the myriads of issues going on in our community, not just the craziness and the crazy fights that we may or may not be seeing on TikTok. Not going to go there. Anyway, so excited for this amazing guest that I've been low-key stalking on Instagram for what feels like forever. And it turned out it actually wasn't that long, so I kind of feel better. But anyway, Lissette Fernandez from Moms4Libros. Welcome to Mondays with Melba, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what Moms4Libros is?
Well, Moms4Libros is basically, we are an organization that's fighting back against things like book banning and taking away of children's rights to a public education that's comprehensive and free. So we are basically the solution for all the extremism we're seeing in our school boards. We're trying to counter that extremist message by showing that we're here, by showing that there's, moms that are not buying the messaging that Moms for Liberty is putting out. So that's us.
Awesome. Okay, so you're like the complete counterweight to the craziness that Moms for Liberty.
We are the anti-Moms for Liberty.
Yes. Here for it. Here for it. So you created this along with
Vanessa Brito, who's a very good friend of mine, and she's my policy and data nerd. I'm the mom with 2 kids in public schools. So obviously for me, this, what's going on in public education right now hits home for me. And I felt it was time for me to come out of my shell and come out of my comfort zone and advocate for my children and basically everybody else's children, because there's a contrary voice that's been missing this whole time. So that's me.
Time. And I mean, this is what I love about it, right? So, the reason why y'all, I'm going to give, of course, the handles and everything is going to be in the comments, so y'all be able to go and follow her. But, the videos that you'd make around things like going for meetings and just keeping everybody informed on what's going on in our school system in such a relatable way. Like, I was like, who is this lady and how can I be down? Like, how can I support this? Because, again, I think people always think of activism and advocacy as something that can only be done by professionals or, people who are wealthy or whatever. But it's like, it's the people with the lived experience who actually, for instance, as we're talking about with the book bannings, have kids that are directly impacted. These are the folks that make a difference. So, this is note to self, y'all. You too can be engaged and literally lead a movement as Lissette and Vanessa are doing. So, but let's dive in.
This is literally just a passion project for us. We are broke. we do not have any money backing us. This is just 2 girls with a microphone, basically. And what we're trying to do is trying to meet people where they are. So that's why a lot of the videos, people just do not have time to sit there and do the research and go through the news articles and go through a whole lot of reading that you need to do. Like, for example, I just did a reel on the recent school board agenda that was just released for the August 16th school board meeting, going basically item by item, explaining which each thing is talking about and which ones are very, are important for you to support, or just to thank the school board member for bringing it up, because it's important that we thank them as well.
Yes.
So my whole purpose, like bringing out these reels and meeting people where they are, is just to keep them engaged in the civic process. Because if you don't understand what's going on, as something as simple as a school board meeting, things get passed that are outside of your control. And it's, you need to be educated so you know what to stand up for or what to advocate for, or basically just what is going on in school boards, because I'm sure a lot of parents don't know what's going on with the book banning, or what's going on, for example, with AP psychology that's been all over the news lately, the African American history curriculum. I'm trying to meet them where they are and just give them the reels with the information so that they can stay up to date. And if hopefully to activate them so that they can start writing to their school board members or writing to their legislators and try and advocate for their kids.
So on that, so you're talking about, different actions that folks can take. So as Moms4Libros, what actions have you, you guys formed when, like in June, right? So what types of actions have you been doing and encouraging and empowering parents to do along with you?
We have been mostly on a school board level. We've asked parents to please show up to school boards. Please, speak their piece to the school board members, letting the members know what it is that they need for their kids to be productive, to be able to learn properly. We have some goals down the line, but for now, what we just really want is for parents to be aware of what's going on a school board level and to be able to have open that line of communication with their school board members. On our website, we've listed out, basically who are the school board members for each district, what their email address is, what their phone number is, so they have easy access to be able to find that information quickly and be able to activate and call their school board member if they hear or see something that they don't like, because they need to hear it.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And also, again, your organization is nonpartisan, right?
Yes, we are nonpartisan. We are for all moms. Things like public education should be a nonpartisan issue because we should all want our kids to succeed in life, and education is part of that. So we are a nonpartisan organization. We are Democrats, like me and Vanessa, we're both Democrats. That's how we met. But that doesn't mean that we won't, allow a Republican or an NPA to be a part of our group, or to, our group is just about educating parents or grandparents or, the community on what's going on in public education. Because public education, whether you're a parent or not, you still pay for it through your taxes. So you should all be aware of what's going on and how your money is being spent to educate our future.
And with that, so tell us a little bit, I think people have heard bits and pieces, and some folks may have tuned out because, again, there's just so much, controversy on so many different topics in Florida that it can be overwhelming. So can you give people a bit of an explainer of what's been happening with AP African American History and AP Psychology, and also maybe even define what AP is, because there might be some folks, if you came here from another country or you weren't educated in the United States, you may have no clue.
Right. So it's overwhelming for me too. There's just, information hits us like every day, and it's a lot that's going on. So basically an AP course in high school is a course that you can take for college credit without having to pay college tuition. So for example, AP Psychology is basically a course that every college student needs to take. It's one, if I'm not mistaken, it's one of the requirements for graduation. So you can, as a high school student, you can take an AP Psychology class and get college credit without having to pay the $600 college tuition that you would need to pay. Mm-hmm. So it benefits all kids, but it mostly benefits underprivileged kids who might not be able to have the financing they need to be able to go to college without having to incur huge college loans. It's a big deal to be able to have access to AP classes in high school. And with what's going on in AP Psychology right now is basically the legislation that's been passed in Florida that's against teaching things of a sexual nature, of sexuality and gender issues, is affecting the AP Psychology class, because you can't have a psychology class without talking about sex, sexuality, and gender. So it's effectively banned. Now, the thing is, the education commissioner, Manny Diaz Jr., has said that they're allowing districts to teach the class in its entirety, but he stipulates so long as it is age and developmentally appropriate, without actually defining what is age or developmentally appropriate. So that still opens up teachers to lawsuits and them possibly losing their teaching licenses for teaching this class. And it's what's going on with African American history is they basically said, no African American history on the AP level in the state of Florida. It was a new class. It's a big deal. But for example, right now, what they did with the curriculum was that they decided to whitewash and water down the effects of slavery for the African American history. And it's not even on an AP level. It's just the curriculum in general of what they teach our kids between 5th and 12th grade. So even though there has been some pushback on from the Department of Education saying that that's not what they say, they're saying, if you look at the what's it called? I'm sorry, I'm missing my words.
The syllabus,
teaching standards.
Yeah.
If you look at the teaching standards and what the words are that they're using, it basically implies that slavery benefited the enslaved, and that's not a cool thing to. No, you don't teach that. No. There's also a portion where it states that that Black people also were I can't remember the exact verbiage right now, but basically where they fought back in places like Rosewood and Ocoee, and that also did not happen. What happened in those two cities in the state of Florida was, they were basically slaughtered and had to leave. The ones that survived, they had to leave the state of Florida so that they wouldn't be slaughtered. So to teach that, all that happened because there was some aggression from the Black people is factually incorrect. And we shouldn't be teaching things that are incorrect to our children. They need to learn the truth. They need to they need to have all the facts of what happened before. I'm kind of a history nerd myself, and I fully believe that you need to learn the factual and the true stories of what happened in the past, simply so you don't repeat them in the future. And if our kids, don't have those facts, the way this country, in my opinion, is headed and is regressing, we'll be doomed to repeat these mistakes from the past.
I mean, I absolutely. I mean, you explained it perfectly, because the reality is, number one, being able to take those college courses means that not only do you pay less in terms of tuition, but you may be able to graduate sooner, right? So that means, let's say if you're able to take quite a few AP classes, you may be able to graduate in, 3 years rather than 4, or something along those lines, which means that's one less year of tuition. That's 1 year of income that you're able to earn. That's a year of taxes that you'd be able to contribute to the community, right? So there's a lot of impacts there. And then, of course, the accuracy of what you're being taught, because you're completely right. You can't talk about human psychology without talking about sex and gender and identity, because how can you be a psychologist and not recognize how that intersects with the mental health of your patients? Like it's
part of human nature to, sex and sexuality it's the makeup of who you are. And if you can't teach about that on a psychological level, what kind of a psychology class is that?
Exactly. And the same with the AP African American history, as well as, Black history generally in the state of Florida, where, teaching that what was actually a racial massacre, like a hate crime perpetuated against an entire town, was somehow, it really wasn't the white people's fault. Somehow it was the Black people's fault. No, we're not going to rewrite history. We're just not going to do that.
Exactly.
And that just leads me to the very disturbing things I'm seeing about PragerU. Can you talk a little bit about that? Have you seen a bit about that? Because that's some foolishness.
That is some crazy foolishness. That is just, on their website, it basically states that they are the solution for I'm trying to remember the verbiage that they used. It's something like the solution against the leftist attack on public education and indoctrination. And yet the head of PragerU, Dennis Prager, has come out and said, yes, our classes are indoctrination. So what? it's everything DeSantis has spoken about. If you've paid attention to anything that he has said about public schools and his attack, because let's not leave that out. This is attack on public education. Everything that he has stated is that are indoctrinating our children. They're indoctrinating our children, but yet here we are. He's whitewashing history. He's putting out, Christian nationalist material for use in schools to teach our kids, and things that are factually incorrect. They're not even accredited to be showing this in schools. It's not none of it is factually correct. But yeah, here we are.
and so it's available now for Florida school districts to be able to use, right? They can take this PragerU curriculum and use them in the schools here in Miami-Dade or in Broward or in Pinellas,
exactly. And it's on a district level how they approve it. So you really need to pay attention to what's going on in your school boards to see if they're going to allow the teachers to use this material. You can write letters opting your kid out of this material. Whether they'll honor that is a whole other question, because we all know, even though they say, this is all about parental rights, parents really don't have rights if they're, if they're banning books and not giving us an option on whether to keep the books, or if they're forcing these materials on our kids without us, being able to say, no, we don't want this. It's really not about parental rights anymore. It's about their version of what they feel is right and not ours.
And because now we're talking about authoritarianism, right? We're talking about, oh my gosh, the left are communists, this and that. Well, the communist playbook is to basically control the educational system, not allow freedom of thought, not allow debate, not allow disagreement, right? Because the reality is, if you look at, and I really encourage folks to look at the PragerU curriculum, because it is very disturbing.
It is very disturbing.
First of all, if you have Candace Owens as part of anything in your curriculum, you already know you got a problem. Okay, because she's literally a paid talking head to say foolishness because she hates herself, right? That. And she literally narrates, a whole section of talking about the civil rights movement, saying that, Black people attacked white people too. And just sort of this, just apologizing for racism kind of thing. You have another section that was being narrated where the students basically, because they do these little video clips, and it's like, students are going to meet Thomas Jefferson or George Washington. And in part of that narration, the character who is speaking as George Washington or Thomas Jefferson says, don't be mad at me because I owned slaves. It really wasn't a big deal because a lot of people did it at the time.
Right. It's total apologist language. There's a few videos. There's one of Christopher Columbus, and how he treated the indigenous, and it was spreading misinformation about the Taínos and the Caribs, about how the Caribs were cannibals, and that's been debunked for years. That none of that actually happened, yet they're still spreading these lies. It's things like Christopher Columbus saying, how can you use your modern day judgment on me when I, enslaved these people and life was so different 500 years ago. Slavery is slavery. Evil is evil. It's not, you can't, it's a lot of the same language that DeSantis uses, where he says things like, you shouldn't allow content materials to teach our kids that will make other people feel bad because of what happened in the past. It's a lot of the same language. You see that in these videos. And it's, it's really gross. I don't know how else to put it, but it's just really gross. It's all full of, inaccuracies, and it's
lies.
pure indoctrination. Yeah, lies. Flat out lies.
Just flat out lies. I mean, like, yeah, and it is just, again, it's just so disturbing that this is, being pushed on our kids. And again, this is not based on a response to parents asking for this material, right? Which would still be dead wrong. But if there was this, group of parents that for real were like, hi, I live in Miami-Dade County. I've looked at this PragerU curriculum. This is what I think would be amazing for our kids. That's a different discussion. But if this is a whole, power structure, we're talking the legislature, we're talking about the governor appointing Manny Diaz Jr. and this, here's your things to do. Here's your marching orders. He's now shoving this on parents and students around the state. And in response, we don't want it.
We don't want it. I mean, and I want to backtrack a little bit on what you said, because you said that he appointed Manny Diaz. He's not only appointing Manny Diaz. Not too long ago, they passed a law stating that school board members could not have been lobbyists within the past 5-10 years. I don't remember exactly the range that it was, which caused a problem for a few school board members, so that they then had to leave. I'm sorry, I thought I saw my kid come in. They then had to resign their position as a school board member, which opened it up for DeSantis to then appoint new school board members. And we've seen that in Miami-Dade with 2 school board members, but one of which has been very supportive of Moms for Liberty. The other one was a private school counselor. She wasn't even a teacher, and she wasn't even in public schools, but now here she is as a public school board member. So it's problematic in that case too, because he's trying to fill the school boards with hand-picked members that he personally selected to pass his agendas. And one of those people in Miami-Dade in particular has decided to introduce, it was in the June meeting, to introduce an item on classical education.
Yep. Tell us about classical education, because it sounds innocuous, but
it's not. I mean, classical education is basically a Eurocentric, Western Civ, male-dominated, Christian-dominated curriculum. It leaves out diverse voices. It leaves out voices of women. It leaves out a whole spectrum of curriculum that is necessary for our kids to be able to be competitive on a global market. And if you don't have that education, if you don't have those voices, how do you expect our kids to be successful in the future?
And I mean, I remember reading something that they're trying to move away from the ACTs and SATs and move more towards, this classical education test, which again is not really accepted by anyone.
It's not accepted by anybody. I mean, what's accepted in the majority of schools, including Ivy League schools that the majority of kids would love to be able to get into, is the SATs and the ACTs, not classical education tests. So I'm not 1,000% sure what he's trying to do with that classical education test. If it's not going to be accepted outside of Florida, he is setting our kids up to fail.
Big time. Oof. Okay. So you have given us a whole word, a whole sermon. I love it. How can folks find you, connect with you? How can they volunteer if they want to help? And what kinds of things can they do in support of Moms4Libros? Especially speaking to, hey, I don't have kids in public school, or my kids are grown or out of state, and they may think, is there a role for me? So if you could give some ideas of how they can support, that would be amazing.
The best parents that we have are actually grandparents, because they have the time to show up to school board meetings, whereas actual parents might be restricted with childcare or work or things like that. So if you're a grandparent and you have the time and you want to stop what's going on in public education, please show up to school board meetings. Please. Yes. For example, like I have, there's the school board meeting that's scheduled now for August 16th. It's literally the day before school starts. So all the schools are doing meet and greets. My two little ones have a meet and greet right in the middle of the day, and I can't attend the public school because kids.
Right.
So,
Hello, mom.
so that's where the grandparents come in, our army of grandparents, where they can show up and speak, be our voices when we can't be there. You can find us on Instagram. We try and put some videos up on YouTube as well, on Twitter, on Facebook, and we also have a private Facebook group where it's more of a discussion item if you want to bounce ideas off each other, or if you want to find out what's going on at a local level. We place a lot of the stuff on that Facebook group, and you can find us at Moms4Libros everywhere. We sort of, I have my TikTok, it's a personal TikTok, but I also put like a lot of the Moms4Libros stuff on there as well, because that's basically what I talk about in my personal TikTok. I just haven't created the second account because I have a lot of followers, and just to build that all up again, it's
right.
Not even.
No, I hear. And then also time, right? Because you're balancing, kids, activism, life, all these other things, like,
Yeah.
I totally get it. So y'all, I'm going to drop the links in the comments so that you can go ahead and follow them, check out their website, and volunteer however you can. Because again, this is how change happens. It's everyday people coming together and fighting for change. And that's how we see the society, the community, the country that we want to live in. So Lissette, I want to thank you and Vanessa for all your hard work, for putting this together, for getting the word out there, and for really educating people and going just above and beyond to really push back against what's happening in the state. So really appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming on and responding to my little DM.
Thank you so much for having us and for letting us get the word out about what we're trying to do and who we are, because that's getting the word out is going to help us all in the long term.
Awesome. Oh, and before I forget, when is the September board meeting? Because again, folks may be watching this at different times. They may not be able to make August, but then September might be, a better time frame for folks.
Let me just double check the date. I think it's September 9th. I just want to double check.
Yes. And don't forget, you can check the website as well and check social media, because they always post updates about upcoming school board meetings, and then even recaps of what has happened at, different school board meetings. So this is very important to definitely note. And as I know we're winding down and Lisette's checking that date, but I also wanted to touch on something that I believe it was under Jeb Bush, if I'm not mistaken, there was a bill that was passed that mandated the teaching of certain racial atrocities that happened here in the state of Florida, and teaching it accurately, not teaching this watered down foolishness that's, coming out now, but teaching the actual history of how, the prosperous towns of Rosewood and Ocoee were, basically demolished because of the fact that they were all Black towns that were doing well and, and we're happy and at peace, that they weren't looking at and going and starting problems with other people. It was the Klan and allied racists and law enforcement at the time that came in and perpetuated these atrocities. So it was a Republican governor in Florida that signed a bill stating that Florida schools had to teach accurate history around racial massacres that happened in Florida. And it is now another Republican governor who I don't even know if you barely can call him a Republican because he's so far off the deep end. But
he's I hate to say it, but he really is like a dictator. I'm Cuban American, and I see a lot of similarities between what happens in my country with what DeSantis is doing right now, and it's very scary for me, to be honest.
I can't imagine.
Yeah. So the school board meeting in September is on September 6th. So it's the first Wednesday in September. If you can't show up August 16th, please show up September 6th. And usually we try and post out what's on the agenda. They post up the agenda items 9 days before the school board meeting to give you time to, craft what you're going to say, craft your speech. We usually try to give like pointers and talking points and things like that, and have a breakdown of what's on the agenda at least a week before, to give you time to do that and look things over, and be able to make time to show up.
That is so amazing. So y'all definitely check out the resources I'm putting in the comments. Follow Moms4Libros, volunteer how you can, and y'all take good care, stay woke,
Thank
stay
you.
informed.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.